Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'm thrilled to welcome an award-winning public relations personality. He spent close to 4 decades as the media relations director for my favorite baseball team, the New York Mets. He's now their team historian and vice president of alumni relations. He's also the author of Mr. Met, how a sports kid from Jersey became like family to generations of big leaguers. He's also one of the advisors for Team Israel Baseball. Please help me welcome Jay Horwitz. Jay, thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure to be with you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yes. Well, we have a lot to cover, but now I want to start by going back with you. You were born in Jersey, and on VJ Day, I read, actually.
Right.
So I normally ask all my guests this, growing up, what was your family life like, in particular in regard to Judaism? Were your family observant at all?
Well, I forget the word. We would observe the holidays. We went to Rosh Hashanah, Kippur. I went to Hebrew school. I was bar mitzvahed. I tried to memorize my Haftorah. I screwed up. Had to stop a couple of times, but I had a great rabbi, his past, Rabbi Eugene Markowitz, been a great friend. And, especially when my mom died, he was there for me, leaving every step of the way. But I didn't go every Saturday, but I observed the high holidays. And I tried to say Yiscah for both my parents are gone.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to say Yiscah for my son.
Well, so also in your family, like I read that you were a big baseball fan also. So
Right.
that you grew up New York had 3 baseball teams when you were growing up. So you were like a Giants fan of it. So how did that feel like? I mean, how did that affect you when they left?
My father, Milton, may rest in peace, and my mom, a big sports fan. My dad was a big baseball Giant fan, a football Giant fan. He adored Willie Mays, and and Harold, his adornment. I got to meet him, and after the Giants left in '57 to '58, my parents took me to Philadelphia to see him there every day, and one of the biggest thrills of my life. I've been in the game now for 45, 46 years.
Right.
Don't get nervous all around a lot of players. When I met Willie Mays for the first time, my hands were trembling.
Really?
And one of the best things I ever did was part of a couple of years ago when we retired his number here at Citi Field, number 24 is flying there. And a lot of people criticized us for doing it, but it wasn't so much what he did with the Mets. It was what he did for baseball in New York City. He's a legend.
Yeah.
And not many players have their numbers retired twice,
Right.
and Willie deserved it. And you know what? It really meant a lot to him. I was glad to be a small part of it.
And Mrs. Payson, promised him that he would be done as well.
Right. And the thing is, the best part about it is that I let our owners know. I said, you know what? When Howie Rose and I presented this at a Hall of Fame meeting, I said, this is what the thing is. The Paysons promised him when he came over here that when Willie retired, his number would be retired. It fell through the crack. And I remember Steve Combs said to me one day, well, we have to fulfill the promise of another owner. And there it was. And it was a great thrill. We kept it secret. It wasn't really noticed until, that day we did it. But I'm just glad to be a small part of that.
Oh, it's great. So when you were growing up, like the Giants left, did you jump aboard the Mets bandwagon right away, or you were
No. I was a Giant fan up until April 1st, 1980. When I went to the Mets. I went to in '64. The Giants and Mets played a doubleheader, 32 inning, 23 games. The first inning, 92nd. I was there the whole time. That Willie Mays even played shortstop in the second game. The Giants won both, and I switched my allegiance slowly but surely. When Willie retired, I would see him when we went to the coast, see him in New York. But no, I became a Met fan April 1st, 1980.
That's fantastic. So before I go into the more press relations thing, so you were a sports writer also, and you covered Joe Namath's Jets. So what was that experience like?
I covered the Jets the year after the Super Bowl. So I think the Jets were 68, 69. I covered 69, 70, made some great friends there. Johnny Sample. I didn't really know Joe that well. Paul Rochester, Al Atkinson, Paul Crane, Pete Lamons, John Niter, John Dockery. And I was a young kid, Jerry Philbin. I was a young kid, and we used to travel on the bus. They took me under their wings, and the late Ruby Eubank was so good to me, really a nice man. The traveling secretary at that time, John Free, was great. So, and I left about the 12th or 13th game to took a job with the Herald News in New Jersey. You know, yeah, that's what I became. I see that's what went over to cover them in that season.
So I'm going to talk more about your book in a second, Mr. Metz.
No, I don't worry about
Fantastic.
it.
Oh, but it's fantastic, fantastic book. But one of the things that you wrote that really stuck out to me is that through my years of being a Met fan, my fandom goes back even before you joined the team. I've read about so many players who've gone through the team, crediting you with making them feel comfortable and included. And you wrote in the book that your aspect of your personality was formed during your childhood years. So can you expand upon that a little bit?
Well, as I said in the book, I was when my mother carried me, she came down with German measles, and I was born blind in my right eye. And when I was 13, the doctors told me that if I don't have my eye taken out, I could lose the other eye. So
Mm-hmm.
since I was 13, I've had an artificial right eye, and I was too embarrassed to say anything until the book came out. And the reason I mentioned in the book, if I could help one person born with some kind of deformity, that you can make something in your life, that's what I hope to accomplish. And maybe because wasn't this physical specimen born, I became more agreeable to other people, understanding people's plight, trying to do human interest stories. I think my upbringing, I was ridiculed as a kid. People made fun of me because I had one green eye and one blue eye. And so maybe that's affected me to be kind to people. It doesn't, to
Mm.
be nasty or be angry, just to be kind. I think because I was born in with a disability, I think affected the way I approach my life.
No, it's really very admirable and things. And so you had gotten a job with NBC's Game of the Week. So how did the involvement with the Mets come about right after that?
Well, I actually never took to. This is the winter of 1980. A late friend of mine, Mike Cohn, um, got me a job at NBC. I was going to be the stat guy for Jody Goraggio and Tony Kubek. Uh, about a couple of weeks before I was supposed to start on the job, I got a call from somebody. This is Jim Nagurney from the Mets. We like to interview for the job opening. I thought it was a friend of mine named Howard Levine. I hung up on him. Later in the day, I found out it was a real Jim Nagurney. I went down to St. Petersburg, Florida. Somehow got the job, I remember I started April 1st, 1980, and I was a PR guy for 38 years. And last 6 or 7, I've been the alumni
Online.
director, and I just feel blessed to be at the same place for so long.
So, you came, like you said, you came in 1980. You said, so I'm a Mets fan since 76, and those were some lean years, late 70s, early 80s. So I remember there was like one thing that I think it was the Daily News that always had the Mets versus Maris, the home ones. So how difficult when you first came in is it to get involved, to drum up like interest in a team that was, not at their best at that time?
One of the reasons I was hired, they wanted to have a PR guy who wasn't stats oriented and with human interest stuff. Some of the first stories I did were Lee Mazzilli as a speed skater, Doug Flynn as a rock and roll singer, Craig Swan as a trainer, just to capture the players' personalities. And that's the way I really existed for 3 years. It really started to change in '80 when we brought Darryl up in May of '83, and a month later we traded for Keith Hernandez. And for me, the big turning point in the organization was in October of '83, after the Orioles World Series. We hired David Johnson as the manager,
Yeah.
and from 1984 to '90, we probably had the most sustained period of success this organization's ever had, and a lot of it because of Davey, the way he directed the team. So, when I first started, it was a Yankee town, and I think from '84 to '90, we averaged about 90 plus wins a year.
Yeah, and those like Davey was such a great personality for the team too. Such a great personality for New York. One of the things that also impressed me about you is you held a gun to anyone's head, an average person's head. They'd be hard pressed to tell you who the press person was, and for any team. But so many people know who you are, and I think that's because one, you do the job well, and also you built up a level of trust with the players. And some of them,
But that's
I
the
was
key. Trust is a player. Yeah.
yeah, I was shocked. Some of them I was shocked about. So at one point when I was a kid, I remember Dave Kingman being my favorite player as a kid. And I didn't know about any of the stories about him later, until later on. I only found those as an adult. But you had a good relationship with him. So is that something that you set out to do right away, to meet
I,
players to try
I
to build
try to
rapport?
treat not only to cater to the All-Stars, I try to treat the 25th guy on the team like the number one guy. I try to, PR guy always ask. I try to go to the guy's locker. What do you need? Can I help you something? Your kids need something. Your wife needs something. And I never wanted to consider myself a suit. I wanted to be just an average guy to develop the level of trust with the players. And once you have the level of trust, especially in a market like this, you can do okay. Once the players don't trust you, they think you have ulterior motive, that's when it gets hard. And
Yeah.
Dave came and actually lived at my house for one summer. We traded back to the Mets. We used to ride to work every day, go through the tolls, and Dave paid the tolls for me every day over the George Washington Bridge.
Oh, that's great. So, no, on that same topic, there was a period of time when I was a kid. I lived in St. Pete, Florida. I was really close to Airline Field. I went there all the time. And for Met spring training, I saw Strawberry go through Gooden and others. Most players were really nice, but there was a couple who weren't. And you even mentioned one in your book. I'm not going to mention any names, but as a PR person, is that something that you're always aware of players' reputations? If you know ahead of time, like how, hey, I should keep my eye on this person or something a little bit?
Sure, when we get a trade or sign a free agent, you ask the other PR guy what he's like, and you try and help him adapt to the city. New York is a tough place to play. A lot of media, a lot of fans, and I always wanted to be there as a loader, as a shoulder to lean on for the guys. Now I go back to what I said before. Not only to ask what can you do for me, what can I do for you, and though
Mhm.
you develop a level of trust with the players, that's the key to a great relationship.
Yeah. So I remember you mentioned it before. I remember that feeling of elation when the Mets got Keith Hernandez. Because, up to that point, they never got players like that. It's always they traded away
Right.
players like that. So, I remember this saying, you told the story that so you wanted to make him feel welcome, but you heard that he didn't want to come here. So could you just share that story here a little bit?
Sure. Frank Cashin, who was a GM at the time, said to me, Jay, I got good news and bad news. We just traded for a former MVP, All-Star World Series champion. I mean, he doesn't want to come. He doesn't want to come to New York. Do something. Try and make him feel welcome. So we're in Montreal at the time, and I came up with a great idea of getting a big stretch limo, me and keys to the airport, taking it back to the hotel. Problem was, I went to the wrong gate. Keith didn't see me, took a yellow cab back by himself, and I took this big limo back to the hotel by myself, feeling pretty awkward and embarrassed. But thankfully, my relationship with Keith prospered after that. Now he's one of my best friends in the game.
Oh, he's fantastic. Great announcer too. So before we get into the Mets at that time too, you were part of one of the most famous April Fool's Day pranks in sports history, the Sid Finch story. So how did that all come about, and how early in the process were you involved?
Well, this is the winter of '85, like February. Frank Casher called me to his office. He said his friend at Sports Illustrated, George Plimpton, they wanted to. I had an idea for April Fool's story. You want to help perpetrate the hoax? I said, by all means. So we were going to sign this 6'7" flute playing guy from Alice Bowl. I forgot where Sid was from, and we would kept it going for a couple of days, but people didn't realize the story came out on April 1st, 1985, and the first paragraph. This is an April Fool's joke. The first letter of every
Right.
word. The people didn't pick up on it right away. So I went to some of the guys. We had a tent where we had Leighton Ostonemar. We had somebody make believe we Sid from behind closed door. Ron Reynolds, one of our catchers, we burnt a hole in his glove. This was Sid's fastball. And the next day, I got a call from the sports editor of one of the New York papers, and he said, how could you give the story to Sports Illustrated? We cover you every day. How
That's
about
great.
us? How would you like to feel that you get an exclusive? But we kept it going for a couple of days, and you couldn't do it in this day and age, my friend, because with the internet and FaceTime, Ticker, TikTok, but we kept it going for a couple of days. And the following year, we had Sid retire at ceremonies at Outlying Stadium, which was great.
That was, I remember that story. Did you get any backlash from that afterwards, after it was found out?
No, no,
No.
no. Jimmy Fry, who was one of our scouts who went on to manage the Cubs,
Uh,
called me and said, Jay, listen, I know your farm system pretty good. How come I never heard of it? I said, Jimmy, that's why we got one over on you. So I think everybody took it in good faith and good,
oh,
spirits.
that's great. So you were part of the great docuseries Once Upon a Time in Queens. I was one of those fans that Ron Darling, talked about, after 84 and 85. I was one of those people that was whipped into a frenzy for 86. In my life, there have been other teams that have come close, but I have never loved any team as much as that 86 team. Beforehand, it was like, kind of like with the plucky underdogs, and now, the feel good story, but now it's like, we're the beast. We're the attitude. We're going to bash your brains. And it was like those Gastineau Jets and the '90s Knicks, but except the Mets actually won it. So, you know, early on, how tough was it to? How many times did you feel during that World Series, like during that season? Was it tough? Let's talk about the season first. Was it tough during that time that you had to like squash fires with that team at all?
Well, yeah, I didn't know what to expect when I got to the ballpark. We had the guys kept me on my toes. Let me say this. It was a lot of different personalities, young kids. We played hard and field hard. Some of them played off the field hard. But you know what? We won 116 games that year.
Right.
Came back from the dead. We're in Game 6 in the World Series, losing by 2 runs, 2 strikes, 2 outs, bottom of the 10th. We came back and won. Yeah, and I said the other league hated us because we got into fights. We were very feisty. We were very braggadocious. We didn't back away from anybody. When somebody hit one of our guys, there was a fight. One time during the year, Mike Tyson even came to spring
Oh,
training. I mean,
yes.
to our park to see Ray Knight. He was a fighter. So it just kept me on my toes during the year.
I could bet. Yeah. So you were in the clubhouse in Game 6 at the end. You were in the clubhouse when Keith came down. Did you feel it was over?
Well, listen, I'm sitting here with Keith and one of our scouts, Daryl Johnson, and I was sitting to myself, how am I going to sell this? We won 114 games. The other teams hated us. We were bragging we win it all, and now we're going to lose. And I was trying, how are these guys going to talk and they're going to hide? But, all of a sudden, you have Gary Carter, Ray
Right.
Knight, Kevin Mitchell, the Mookie at bat. We win the game. And what people don't forget is the next day we were losing 3-0 after the
Right.
fifth inning. Came back and won that game too. So this team was determined not to lose. Simple as that.
Unbelievable grit on that team. And the team voted you a full share. How stunned were you afterwards? And how did you feel?
Well, it was an anomaly at that time, and I was very honored. And I never did anything in my life for money. And the guys made I was a little bit hesitant about taking the money, but Keith and Ray Knight made me take the money, and I put it to good use, and it was something very, very unexpected, but very much appreciated.
And well deserved. I mean, you really, looked out for those players. So as much as I loved Frank Cashin for building that team, I was so upset when he immediately started dismantling it after the World Series. And starting with Ray Knight and Kevin Mitchell. So in the documentary, it was like implied that Cashin hated the way the image of the '86 Mets. Was that something that he has shared with you at all, or no?
Well, Frank thought that because we were happy with Darryl and Doc, that we lost chances to win multiple championship, and it bothered him. Let me just leave it there.
Okay. You became friends with so many of the players and managers for the years. Who were some of the ones that you were the hardest when they were let go for you?
You know what? I've never been married. I married my job, and any time a guy was traded, you get close with the managers, with Terry Collins, Bobby Valentine, Joe Torre was my first manager. Uh, I hated when Darryl left to go to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
When Dwight left. when Daniel Murphy left. You know what? They were all my kids, and
Right.
I developed. Again, my whole thing was I try to treat them. I try to kindness and respect to the last guy on the team just as much as the first guy. If there's anything that would happen, why I was successful, if I was in the locker room, was that motto.
One person who was talked about a lot during the docuseries and was one of my favorite Mets of all time was Gary Carter. Can you just talk a little bit about him as a person?
Yeah. When I in 2011, I broke my ankle, and and that was about the time that Gary came down with cancer. He called me every Tuesday up until the end. How was I doing? He seventh game in the World Series. He did 6 live interviews. Yeah, people said he was Kid Carter, but he understood the obligations, the media, the fans, the autographs, the charities. Gary always felt he would die young. His mother died at an early age from leukemia,
Mm.
and Gary died at 57, way too young. And he's Gary was just different kind of guy. He was he 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 was an advanced scout before all the analytics, and he could go all for five as long as White struck out 11 or Sid Finch did this, he'd be happy. Gary's a good friend, and like I said, just way too young to die at 57.
Absolutely. I want to ask about 9/11 and afterwards. Can you talk about that time? The Mets were very involved in the city and spending time in New York to help out. So, what were some of the things that you remember the team doing and what the feeling with the team was? Was there like a reluctance to resume playing?
Well, there was a lot of the guys felt that it was too soon to start to play. We were in Pittsburgh at 9/11. We came
Right.
back. The Shea parking lot became a recovery area, shipping stuff downtown, supplies and medical stuff. And then we went to Pittsburgh about the 14th to 15th to play 3 games. And then it was determined, our owners at the time, the Wilpons, went to Mayor Giuliani, and it was decided it was time to start to play again. I remember going to the park on the day of the 21st, with security, police, FBI all over, is there going to be another bomb?
Right.
Is Che going to be bombed? Nobody knew what to expect. But you know what? In the first,
That'd be frightening. Yeah.
when the game started and the crowd cheered, you could see the policemen and firemen cheering in the stand, and especially after Mike hit the home run. Then we knew we did the right thing. But a lot of us were afraid. We had a meeting before the game, and a lot of people expect fears to the
Sure.
owners that it's just the right time.
What was that
But
feeling like in the park and everything when Mike hit that when Piazza hit that home run? I mean, I was in tears just watching it on
I
TV.
don't feel bad. This is it'll be next in 26. It'll be 25 years later. I still get goosebumps when I
Yeah.
watch Raise Cold. I hear Howie Rose's call. This has got a chance. This got a chance, and I got to know Steve Carson a little bit after he was a pitcher of the Braves, but he
Right.
was from Queens, and I remember, a lot of the Braves felt, they hated to lose because, before the game, the Mets and Braves embraced, and we hated each other
Right.
at that time. But it just brought New York together. If you want to put one thing on my grave, the epithet that I was part of the 2001 team, because we made a difference. We helped the city heal, and I was glad to be part of that.
Chipper Jones still gets choked up talking about it,
Yeah,
during interviews.
I
Yeah.
do too. I do
Yeah.
too.
So let me ask about your book. Okay, like I said, Mr. Met, how a sports mad kid from Jersey became the like family for generations of big leaguers. So, like I said, great book. What prompted you to write it at the time?
I want to. I go back to my eye thing. I want to let people know that I was born with one eye, and maybe it can be a source of inspiration to people born with a disability. I want to pay tribute to my dedicated assistant for 22 years, Shannon Ford, who
Mhm.
passed away age 44 from breast cancer. I want to have a chapter with her. I just wanted to relive some of the friendships and things I made through the years, and just how fortunate I was to be at the same place for X amount of years, and fortunate to be a Met.
Great, fantastic book. So many great stories in it. I definitely recommend everyone provide, especially your Met fan. But I want to sidetrack for a moment. So you're involved in Team Israel baseball. I've had on Nate Fish on here, and he was great. He was, told great stories. So how did you get involved to begin with? And what can you tell me about the team going forward?
I got a call from a friend of mine in MLB. He says Team Israel was looking for be a PR guy at the last WBC. I jumped on it. A great experience. Jody Alter, Peter, the guys, Adam Gladstone. And listen, I'm not gonna be honest with you. I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm not a religious Jew. I'm not. But the 2 weeks that we traveled with them,
Mhm.
I really felt more Jewish than I ever felt in my entire
Mhm.
life. Uh, Dean Beamer, I'm forgetting his name. The Oriole pitcher, Dean Kramer,
Right,
who,
right, right. Yeah.
yeah, he was very religious. We went to Friday night services when we beat Nicaragua. Everybody got excited the first game. Unfortunately, we played like three All-Star teams right after that and didn't do well. But it was a great experience, and I really I still kept I'm in contact with a lot of those guys, and it was really great. I'm happy to be part of it, and I hope we do a little bit better next year.
I hope so. No, I was riveted to those games as well. I want to come back to the Mets. For years there was this perception the Mets didn't do enough to honor their own past, and that's kind of changed now in the past few years. Like you had the old timers game, you had the retiring of well-deserved players numbers, like Keith, Doc Darrell, and now David Wright. So you're now in charge of alumni relations and also speak to former Met players regularly on your podcast, which I watch all the time. Can you talk about how that came about and what are some of the things that you are going to continue doing?
Well, this year, after the 2018 season, Jeff Wilpon came to me and said, "We like you to switch jobs. You would like. We've never really had anybody devoted just to the alumni." So I said, first I wasn't happy because I like to travel, like my time in the locker room. But I said maybe I can make a difference. So my whole philosophy was to bring back people into the family and
Mhm.
not only talk to the All Stars. Quick story: Choo Choo Coleman was Hobie Landry was the first player we took in the '62 draft. I called him right 2 days after I got the job. He says I was the first somebody from Mets who called him after 55 years or 50 years. My whole thing was bringing guys back into the family. Right now we have ambassadors, Mike Piazza, David Wright, Tim Tuffle, Mookie Wilson ambassadors, Todd Seals and ambassadors. We have these meet and greets at the games. We bring in, to celebrate anniversaries, like we did Santana's no hitter, Leiter's game against the Reds a couple of years ago, Robin Ventura's Grand Slam single. Next year we'll celebrate we reach through the year. It's the 25th anniversary of the 2000 team,
Um,
50th anniversary of the 2015 team. Bring back Danny Murphy. And again, the highlight would be the year on July 19th when we retired David Wright's number, put him in the Hall of Fame.
is there any talk about who comes next after David Wright as far as numbers?
Well, it's not publicly, yeah, but we're just talking about a couple of things.
Well, I'll lobby for Gary Carter as well.
Okay, I got you.
So, okay, so you've won award. You won the Fitchell Award for Public Relations Excellence in Major League Baseball, the Thurman Munson Award for Excellence in Dedication Media Relations, and now the Mets have named the Citi Field Press Box after you. How did that hit you to be honored that way by the team?
It's crazy. I mean, I never thought, with all the great PR people I've had here before, did I have after I'm long gone, my press box will still be here, hopefully. It's a great honor, and I'm really indebted to the people here, my friends here, to Steve Cohn and Jeff Wilpon for making it possible. It's an honor. I never said I'd be possible. A little boy growing up in Clinton, New Jersey, couldn't play baseball or wasn't very athletic to have these nice things handed to me. My only regret is my dad passed away in 1970, and he was never allowed to see me, make it to the majors with the Mets. My mom did. My father would have gotten a big kick out of it.
I'm sure they'll be very proud. I mean, like I said, you're very admirable, very admirable career as well. What comes next for you?
Well, I mean, I'm getting on in the years. Hopefully, work another year or two more, and we'll see what happens. As long as the Cones will have me, I'll stay here as long as I can, and keep bringing back guys, drawing people back into the family, and honoring our past. That's what I'll be doing.
Oh, Jay, I want to thank you so much again for coming on. Like I
My
said, it's been a
pleasure.
big pleasure.
My
I'm
honor. Thank
a
you.
fan of yours.
Happy holidays to you and your family, and thank you for reaching out to me.
Thank you, Jay. Again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and again, a very special thanks to Jay Horwitz. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.